Welcome to another episode of Mexican in the Kitchen. Cochinita is a traditional dish and the base of it is achiote. You might also know it as annatto seed. You can find annatto being sold in many different ways. You can find the seed, you can find powder, but I think the most common is this paste. And nowadays you can also buy it liquid. If you are using the liquid one, you can just throw that in here, just as I'm doing. When you buy the paste, you might get one tablet or you might get 4 on one package. Maybe 2 sometimes, it depends, but for this recipe we are going to use one whole box. So in this case I'm going to just open the tablets and throw them in. To my blender I'm going to add half a cup of apple vinegar. I will add half a cup of orange juice. Usually you use bitter orange, but if you cannot find that kind of orange, then you can use the normal sweet orange juice and add a bit of lime juice. I'm going to throw a small piece of cinnamon. If you have powdered cinnamon, you can also use that one. I will also add 4 pieces of clove. I will use about 8 pieces of whole black pepper. I will throw in some oregano. I really like it, so I put a bit more. If you are not a huge fan, then you can use a bit less. I am adding 2 garlic cloves. At this point, I will add about a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to close the lid and I'm going to blend everything. Remember to blend it for a while, because you have the cloves, you have the cinnamon. Those are usually quite hard and it depends on your blender, but those might take a while. Just to be safe, keep your blender running for a while. Annatto seed or achiote has a really strong pigment. It was used before in some paintings, in some body paints, in some tribes. Nowadays it's used in the food industry as color. It's used on cheese, for example, on some candies. So be careful when you do this. You will notice a really bright orange reddish color. You can probably wash it off, but it can also make some nasty stains. For preparing cochinita, I would recommend that you use pork shoulder or ribs. That's pretty good. You can also use any part of the pork, because the traditional way is put it underground, put the whole pig. But of course, if you prefer some more lean meat, you can use a bit of grease, a bit of lean meat and make a mix. So basically you can use whatever you want. In this case I'm using a bit more of a lean meat. In this case I'm just cutting it in some smaller pieces and I'm throwing them to a bowl where I'm going to add my marinade later. I have my pork meat and I have my marinade ready. I'm going to throw them all in this bowl. As I told you, it has a really bright red color, it's beautiful, it smells delicious. I'm going to mix everything quite nicely. I want to make sure all my pork meat is covered with the marinade. That marinade and those flavors have to reach everywhere. Because I'm going to leave this on the fridge for maybe 4 or 5 hours, preferably from the night before. I want the meat to soak all these flavors. I will cover this with plastic, or if you have a container with a lid, I will cover it and put it on the fridge. Traditionally, cochinita uses maguey leaves, but you cannot always find those outside of Mexico. In this case, I'm using banana leaves. I usually get my banana leaves from Asian stores. They're usually frozen, so I just leave them on the fridge for one night before. Then I just wash every one of the leaves. I warm up a skillet on a 3 or 4 out of 6, so medium fire. Once it's warm, I just put my leaves. You will notice how it immediately changes of color. Depending on the size of the container is the amount of leaves you will probably need. I usually use a small container, so I only use 1 or 2. I'm using an oven tray. Try to use something that's a bit high, because this will generate a lot of liquid and you don't want to make a mess. I will start by covering my oven tray with aluminum foil, and after that I'm going to place my banana leaf on top of that. Banana or maguey leaves give a really special flavor to the dish. I really like the banana leaf because I cannot find the maguey, but I would recommend that you try to get them, otherwise you can skip both. Once my tray is ready, I'm just going to take all the meat and place it here. I want to place it and not just throw it in, because it's a small container and I want everything to fit. But if you have a larger container, you don't have to be so careful, just throw everything in there. Once our meat is in, we're going to take the rest of the marinade and just throw it in there. Make sure you put it in there a bit evenly. Make sure you cover the meat nicely. Everything is nice, moist. We're going to cover all of this and just throw it into the oven. So you will notice how much the marinade changes. It will mix with a lot of the juices from the meat and you will notice how the color, the texture changes, and it turns into a beautiful, beautiful dish. Since our meat is ready, we're going to close the banana leaves, and then we're going to continue with the aluminum foil. If your aluminum foil is a bit too short, it doesn't matter, try to close it as much as you can, and then you can add an extra layer. Just make sure everything is wrapped nicely. Traditionally, this dish was cooked underground, and that's why we want to pack it really nice, so we can preserve most of the moisture. My oven is ready at 165 Celsius or 325 Fahrenheit. Depending on the oven, I would leave it for 2.5 hours or 3 hours. After that, I will check every half an hour and only take it out when you can shred the meat really easily. If we're making cochinita, we really need to make some Xnipec sauce. Xnipec is Mayan for dog nose, and this is because this sauce is supposed to be quite spicy and it will make your nose run, so it will make it wet as a dog's nose. Truth is that once you make cochinita and you top it with this Xnipec sauce, you will understand why this is such a perfect complement, and you will understand why if you make one you have to make the other. I'm going to start with some red onion. I'm using 1 or 2 medium-sized onions. You will notice the amounts are basically up to you. I would say for this amount of onion I would use 1 habanero pepper. If you like it more spicy, you can use 2 or 3. If you cannot eat too much spice, I would say just use a small piece and throw it in there. It will give a lot of flavor. It might make it a bit spicy, but it's up to you. For this sauce, we're going to need some orange juice and some lime juice. I'm going to use maybe 2 large oranges and maybe 3 or 4 limes. Now that I have squeezed them, I have about half a glass of each, and this should be enough for our sauce. For seasoning, I'm going to add some oregano and I'm going to add some salt. And I will finish everything by adding the half a glass of orange juice, the half a glass of lime juice, and mixing everything well. It is perfect if you start doing this when you put the meat into the oven, because this sauce needs a few hours, and it's perfect if you cover it now, put it into the fridge and give it a few hours. My sauce has been on the fridge for a couple hours, and as you can see, the onion as well as the juice have changed a bit of color. This is exactly what we want, and now we're ready for our meat. My cochinita has been in the oven for about 4 hours now. I have been checking it from time to time, and as you can tell, there's already a lot of liquid. This liquid smells beautiful, it tastes great. It is a mix of our marinade with all the juices from the meat. As you can tell, it's really easy to shred this meat. I barely have to use any strength at all. It's just coming off like quite easily. I wanna shred as much as I can and make sure everything mixes evenly with the juices, with the fat. Our cochinita right now is ready, and we can make tacos, we can make sandwiches. That will be the most common. You can also make maybe some quesadillas I've done and they're really good. You can eat these just with rice, maybe with some beans on the side. Believe me, this is amazing. It's hard to resist just to eat it with the fork, and that's it. It's such a great marinade. It has a lot of flavor, a lot of history and culture in one dish. I don't do cochinita very often, so it's kind of a special occasion. I wanted to make myself some really nice handmade corn tortillas. I'm putting some meat in there. You can also use wheat if you want. You can use like some maybe French bread, like really crunchy, it makes a really nice sandwich. But right now, corn tortilla, some meat, some of my Xnipec sauce, and this makes for a perfect taco. If you're living in Finland and you're interested on where to find these Mexican ingredients, I'm going to leave the link on the description. This is how you make cochinita, this is how you make the Xnipec sauce. It's really nice when you make them together. This is a really typical southern Mexico dish. You can find it probably everywhere. I've been once in Merida and that thing was all around. It's delicious, it's really good. I would eat it at any time of the day. It's something so traditional, it comes from the Mayan culture. It's really delicious. I think it's one of the most iconic dishes from the region. You should try it at home. Press like, subscribe, all those kind of things. And see you in the next one.